You're live, Commissioner.
Good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners check-in. It is Thursday, August 11th, 2022. It is 10:20 a.m. A little bit of a late start this morning. We're set to go until 11:30 a.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We're in Building 1, Room 280. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. We have several topics on our agenda today. The first one is to approve the Black Lake Regatta application. And we have Under Sheriff Brady here with us. County Manager, would you like to introduce?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a matter of context for the viewing public on the normal circumstances based on the board's direction. The Commission's check-in is not live streamed. However, since we had to cancel the regular board meeting of last Tuesday at 2 in the afternoon and move some items to the next week's meeting, we needed to make sure that you have the opportunity to take an action on some time-sensitive items. And as a result of that, the board requested to have this meeting live streamed just to make sure when you take a final action is recorded on the YouTube channel. So we do have a couple of items for you to consider a final action. We have not received any public comments related to those two items. So the first item for your consideration is related to the Black Lake Regatta application. This is a yearly application that we receive for an event. There occurs a boating event that occurs in Black Lake. And this has a time sensitive since this event will occur over this coming weekend. So, and again, I think Commissioner Edwards stated last Tuesday, this has been in the works for many years. It has been something that the Sheriff's Office has supported, and the application has proven to be complete. And at this point, we will ask the board to consider approving the application. Under Sheriff Brady.
Yeah, good morning, Commissioners. I appreciate you taking up this in a timely manner like this. This, as we mentioned, is a very long-standing event that occurs on Black Lake, and we strongly support this group's ability to be able to hold this this fundraising event out there at the lake.
Thank you, Under Sheriff. Any questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions.
Commissioner Menser? Okay, with that, I'm ready for a motion.
I move to approve the Black Lake Regatta application.
Is there a second?
Yes, second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? I'll call for the vote.
Commissioner Edwards?
Aye.
Commissioner Menser?
Aye.
Commissioner Mejia?
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Under Sheriff Brady.
Thank you.
Our next matter on our agenda is a request for proposals for the Thurston County Office of Housing and Homeless Prevention to receive proposals from agencies to implement the housing and essential needs, the HEN program and rent assistance programs.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Also, this item was discussed this past Tuesday during your agenda setting. And as a matter of perspective and background, this is related to the Community Action Council making a decision they do not want to partner with the county to provide the housing and essential needs, manage the housing and essential needs program and rental assistance program with the county. The result of that, it was a couple of steps, short-term, mid-term, and long-term steps that we provided to the board, and the board has supported the first two. One was the county making sure that those checks for those individuals involved within this program will continue to be issued. And I appreciate the coordination here with county staff, financial services, the auditor's office, budget office, Robin Campbell, everybody else involved. That those checks were issued for the month of July as well as for the month of August. Also, the board supported the concept of extending the contract with Life Storage for 3 months to make sure that they manage the program as well as managing the support, program support they need, those individuals within the program. The board approved that. So the long-term step is this particular request for proposals. That we will be finding an outfit that will be providing on the long term the housing and essential needs program and assistance. As you heard from staff last week, includes the rental assistance, as well as the case management, and also includes the provide rehousing services for single adults. So the three elements of this particular request for proposals. If the board approves this this RFP, we will issue as soon as possible. And then the result of that process will come back for to the board with a proposal for you to consider awarding the contracts to the selected outfit. That is the context of this particular item, and I believe Commissioner Edwards suggested that perhaps there is an urgency, and that is why you have this item before you this morning.
Thank you. Okay, any questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions.
Commissioner Mentor, any questions?
No.
Okay, I'm ready for a motion.
I move to authorize a request for proposals for the Thurston County Office of Housing and Homeless Prevention to receive proposals from agencies to implement the Housing and Essential Needs Program and rent assistance programs.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
No.
I'll call for the vote.
Commissioner Edwards?
Aye.
Commissioner Mincer?
Aye.
Commissioner Mejia?
Aye, motion passes. Okay, so that will conclude our action items. Next on our agenda is reports on external boards and commissions. Commissioner Edwards, we'll start with you, sir.
The only external board is the Capcom issue, and I believe I brought that up already, and Robin commented that also kind of chimed in. That's the only of interest, I think, that took place. So I have nothing new to report in that regard. And then I think I was out at a Veterans Hall, Town Hall meeting yesterday out at Yelm, a couple hours. And that was nothing really to report on that. We had our representation out there from the county as well. So they're gonna try and have these get-togethers, I don't know, maybe quarterly or something, to explain services to the vets. Kind of an accessory to the hub, I think, is what it is. And that's it for me.
Okay, Commissioner Mentor?
Lot meeting last night. The transition to our new executive director proceeded along. We have approved the compensation package, which was kind of the final piece of the puzzle. So Matt Kennelly will be taking over. Mike Strube, who's been our longtime former director, will be either leaving November 30th or December 15th. And at that point, we have a contract with Matt Kennelly to take over, and we're all very confident. He's been a long time employee in training, groomed for this position, and I think we'll be in good hands. The only other big external committee issue is the Capitol Lake. The MOU came out. There were some concerns from our staff about some of the pieces. We're gonna have a meeting about that. I did see updated, I think I had mentioned that our contribution share had gone from 5 to 10, and I saw a new sheet now where we're at 7.3. So apparently we're dialed back down again a little bit in terms of a financial contribution. So I haven't heard the details of that, but that was just what I saw in the very latest draft. So more to come on that, but there's ongoing discussion about the different pieces of how the county will slot into that MOU that they'd really like to have an MOU in early October for a presentation to the legislature. But there's a lot of things still left to be ironed through. For its part, Law is part of that agreement, and they're pretty comfortable with where they landed in terms of contribution, because they had to sort of be able to make a business case for ratepayers as to how the estuary would actually save them money. And they were able to do that, but it was a lot different than the original estimates. So they had to basically go deeper and do it more, a little more robust economic analysis so that they could justify why they would be paying, X number of dollars for this solution, that it would specifically offset costs and risks that they would take on if the capital lake was not changed, or if the status quo were left to, so that's county manager.
Related to that item, Commissioner, I had a conversation with the executive director from the Port of Olympia yesterday, yesterday. Among many other topics that we're discussing, she asked if I will be interested in attending a briefing. I have to still have learned about the date the Port of Olympia will have related to the Capital Lake, particularly on the sediment management they have. As a consultant, they have been hired, and they will be presenting the results of that study. So I asked them to let me know when that will occur, and I stated that perhaps I will invite you, Commissioner Messer, to attend as well, since you've been representing the county in this effort.
Sure.
So I will keep you posted as to when that briefing will occur, and then we'll report back to the board after the fact.
I mean, I can tell you that this has been so like when you're in a mediation in a legal case, and they do what they call shuttle diplomacy, where they put everybody in separate rooms, and the mediator goes from room to room and then tries to, work. I mean, that's what they're doing, but like at a community-wide scale. So we've been doing these little, rather than it all being doing it in one day, it's been unfolding over weeks and weeks and now months. But I've been having these little, 30-minute, updates, sometimes with Jeff, sometimes not, where they're kind of shuttling through after they've talked to, other stakeholders, and they keep shuttling around trying to get everybody, because all the pieces have to fit for it to really, fly. So it's a lot of effort going into this. I just want to say that up front. I'm trying to be balanced, being a good partner, but also protecting the county's, interests in terms of financially and legally. So and staff's helping me with that, and I'm on the executive committee, Jeff's on the funding governance work group, but a lot of times they combine the two. They've kind of roped all the executive committee members have been kind of roped down into the funding and governance work group, so we're kind of attending meetings on both fronts. So it's been a lot of work there.
Could I follow up on this topic? I guess I continue to be concerned on this issue because I believe the elephant in the room is not being talked about. And that elephant in the room is flooding. Is flooding. And I guess it's because I'm so old, I get to remember all the stuff from way back when. And downtown gets flooded on occasion, but it really got flooded prior to the dam being built. When the dam was built, they had some flood control built in with that. If the dam is removed and we have a heavy rain event for several days, usually that coincides with a heavy snow event prior to the heavy rain event, and then we have that runoff that takes place in conjunction with a king tide, then you end up with the city of Olympia getting severely flooded.
I'll make a note to raise that with consultants, because I know that was studied in the EIS, and I could probably dig it out of the 2,000-page binder, but I'm not sure where it is. But I will make sure that I say that the commissioner has a concern about that, and what's your response to that, and I'll report back.
Okay, that'll probably cover that. And then the dredging issue kind of goes along from the port's perspective of how we're going to continue to run the port if we don't have sediment in the lake area, and it in turn goes out during high flows out to the port.
And I think that's the report the consultant is going to be presented to the Port of Olympia and the sediment management.
I just hope that there's a historical position reviewed, and that historical position is they could look at past photos that people have of the flooding downtown. And now you coincide that with the potential of the sea level rising, I think it becomes even more important if that truly is a fact, which I'm not up on that, but I know that's been talked about. They're talking about a wall down around downtown to prevent that from damaging downtown.
Yeah.
So
I heard, so at the lot meeting, we get a report on the sea level rise committee, and somebody asked the question, is the sea level rise, you know, infrastructure that's planned being, because that was all kind of started before it was really clear that an estuary was going to be. So the question was being asked, well, is this sea level rise adaptation plan factoring in the conditions of the estuary? And I didn't hear a clear answer to that, but it kind of plays into your question, right? You know, I mean, it's, if that's where it's going, then that plan might need to be adjusted from where it was, if it was not, if it was based on the status quo. And there's a difference, in the flooding scenarios based, you know, that makes sense, if that's true, yeah. So I'll find out more about that when I go to the sea level rise meeting in the fall. I'll ask that question.
And that whole flooding issue is an issue, I'm afraid, that it's been overlooked to a degree. I know you're gonna look into it and see, but
Yeah.
if that truly is not factored in, I think we're gonna shoot ourselves in the foot here if this process continues without adequate review of that issue. So, anyway. That's my follow-up.
Anything?
I'm done.
I guess the only, board meeting I have to report on is Orca, which I attended yesterday. There was a meeting between the city managers to talk about the, Orca not enforcing, the, outdoor burnings for cooking and for kind of like what I've brought beforehand, or for kind of recreational fires, like fire pits and things like that. They were not going to be enforcing those anymore. Some of the jurisdictions had concerns, so there's been talk about, you know, like the jurisdictions don't have to change their codes or anything. Orca's just is in a place where they don't feel really the organization is in the place in a staffing capacity or in financial capacity to be enforcing those, and they operate only on a complaint basis anyways. So there was a conversation between the city managers, and of course, you know, I've been respectful and I've been saying, you know, the county has its own view on this, but we're not going to, you know, it's going to affect the jurisdictions, the cities, much more than it would the county, because the county doesn't have any code on that specific thing. So there's going to be more conversation on that. I know that Jeff Johnston has been reaching out to the fire chiefs in the affected jurisdictions and also met with the city managers, and so there's just a lot of information going out on how this would affect Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater. Also, we did the performance review for Jeff Johnston, and he got a raving accolade of both from staff. Staff are very happy with Jeff's leadership these past 6 months, and the board has been really happy to kind of receive that feedback from staff, right, and from the general public. So he's doing a great job, and I know that it's been kind of difficult for him coming in, and then we had a couple of staff leave, so then he was hiring staff and trying to fill those positions. So he's been kind of like in this transitioning phase, so he's done a great job. And Other than that, I believe Orca is going to move away from the county when it comes to the financial. We are currently, and I'm looking at Robin right now because we're,
Are you related, talking about the support that we provide
Yes.
related to the, okay, the
Yeah.
accounting aspects? Yeah.
yes, so we support them with their accounting, with their payroll, with those kind of things, and they're gonna be moving away from that in the future just because they want to be more independent, feel like they're in a better situation to be able to do that internally rather than, but they were thankful for the county and the support that they've been offered these last years and really had nothing but great things to say, but just they feel like now it's a great time to transition out of that. They will also be doing a market study for employees right now when it comes to salaries, and they're looking at different places. They said they talked to the company that the county is working with, and they're just trying to find a good fit to what would fit with their needs. So kind of just an overview.
I had planned to have Orca present to the Board of Health, but we decided to wait till we get our full Board of Health. And then we can meet the new director and they can give an overview to the Board of Health of what they do. And we just thought that makes sense. So that'll be coming hopefully in the fall.
That's exciting, yeah. I know Jeff had mentioned, he's doing already presentations to the Mason County Board of Health. So I know he's reaching out to different Board of Healths to try to kind of give them an overview on that. So that's exciting that, you know, I think it would be beneficial for new members. Councilmember Vasquez is in Orca as well as I am, so.
Oh, she is
Yeah.
a representative from Lacey?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I think for the community members who are coming on board, it would be beneficial for them to kind of know a little bit about the organization.
I got a question, Commissioner Mejia, for you, since we're on external boards.
Yes.
So this came from a constituent who, and I promised her that I would just ask you, because you're the representative on RHC.
Yes.
And I was wondering if, what she wondered was, has there ever been a discussion, and I'm just asking you because if there was, it would probably happen at the RHC, about rent hike limits, meaning like, not exactly rent control, but like where you could, a landlord couldn't raise more than 10% in a year, let's just say. That's just a random scenario. And they could go 10% the next year if, you know, prices are skyrocketing, but because people live there, it would at least give people some like a year of lead time, like, okay, I know I'm probably gonna get priced out of this home, but they can't do it so fast that I'm evicted within like a month. And I didn't know, there may be some state law that prohibits localities from even considering something like that, but I just thought I would ask if that's ever been a concept that RHC has, because so many people are, you know, getting notices, you know, after, right, the tail end of COVID, when the eviction moratorium, people were starting to get notices like, I'm doubling your rent as soon as this moratorium is lifted and things like that. It just seemed like, you know, I'm all for the free market, but housing is just, when we're spending money and fighting homelessness, just scaling those increases, you know, again, the market's the market. I'm not saying that you completely do rent control like they have in big cities, but scaling the acceleration rate so that people at least have a chance to find somewhere would be something that seems like it'd be worth talking about, but I don't know if it's legal.
We haven't discussed it at the RHC. What we discuss is kind of the different ordinances that each city is doing. Olympia reported yesterday on the different things that they're planning to do.
Yeah, if I may.
Yeah.
I think it was prior to you joined the RHC. It was,
Okay.
and it was in the beginning of the pandemic. There was a lot of discussion about rent control at that level.
I thought there was, that's why I'm just asking, so that I can let this constituent know.
Never got tracked in terms of because either it was during the emergency or long-term, never was a cohesive way to move forward on that. And at that time, the RHC was just forming and so yesterday, the City of Olympia representative reported there in the study sessions, they will be implementing a resolution, not necessarily to control rent, but just have a somewhat of a waiting period in a way. And as I recall, if a landlord raises 5%, they have to give at least, I think, 120 days notice. If it's up to 10%, don't quote me on numbers, it was about 180 days.
Well, that's that's sort of along the
So
line.
that's part of what the City of Olympia is gravitating, and they reported that they had a good among themselves, the council members, a good study session, and most likely that will move forward. But it really was not a rent control per se, but it was a little more of a
Longer notice period.
leniency on the notice, some of the tenants will pick up.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the RHC, like last year was just, I felt like we were chasing our own tail, jumping from one thing to another and trying to work well within the jurisdictions and communicate better. And this year, I think we're slowly starting to get the wheels rolling, so we were able to, we've incremented the meeting times, and so it was good to hear what different jurisdictions are doing. Yum also reported several things that they're working on in terms of affordable housing. And so it was just, it's slowly starting to we're knowing what each jurisdiction is doing in terms of affordable housing.
Where are you guys at on the whole, there was the whole discussion about adding a director or some kind of staffing?
Yeah, we're working on the structure with Tom, and the next meeting we will be presenting the structure. I think the larger conversation with the RHC, which I myself have some reservations, is they have the lofty goal to become an independent organization. The independent organization, similar to LOT, if that was to draw a parallel, then at least from my point of view, there is a lot of fiduciary stumbling blocks, if I may, because this jurisdiction is a lot of money that coming for housing and homeless related items comes to the county. And I think at this point, my concern is the county cannot delegate that authority to a third party to manage that. So there's a lot of that stuff. I think there's a lofty goal that at some point that was the perspective of the director, but we're building on an administrative staff that will specifically be supporting the RHC. So then that is coming up.
We have to reopen the ILA anyways too, right?
Yeah.
Because there's, I think we have to kind of renegotiate just with the home fund coming in, and if we're gonna be adding staff, we just have to reopen that. And
so hopefully we'll be done this fall with that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Just to follow up on that issue, on delegating that authority, if you will, ends up, we see what it ended up, with when we didn't have adequate control. I don't know where the liability lies in the end, but is there anything new coming up on that whole bugaboo without going into the
So
depth on
to
it?
address your first question, I think that's probably my main concern. But secondly, I don't know if we can, to be honest with you. I don't think we can just take federal funds and just have a third-party organization to manage those. Aside.
You cannot. I will jump in here. You cannot.
We're working on the details of that matter. And in fact, we just signed a contract with a accounting firm to help us dive into a little more detail, the specifics of some of the findings that we encounter. So as soon as we have a little more concrete information to the next steps, we'll schedule a second session with you to provide you with the details.
So, did I answer your question? Okay. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to commissioner items. Commissioner Edwards, start with you.
I've got kind of a bugaboo to talk about, but, I don't know, do you want me to go first, second, third, whatever, I mean,
I don't really have anything, so.
Okay.
It's all you.
I haven't heard anything more from Elizabeth on the written legal opinion I've been pushing for a long period of time. I mean, I wanted something, you know, from the Attorney General. That didn't happen. But there is a reason I want that, and that is because the past Attorney General, going all the way back to Eikenberry, when Christine Gregoire was working for Eikenberry, and they wrote that opinion about the annexation being allowed to be the move, if you will, so move into annexed areas. And there was good rationale in the explanation of why they said what they said at that point in time, that under our Constitution, to move the county seat, it takes a vote of the county residents to make that happen. And under an annexation, if we followed along the lines of where we're headed today, the only ones that get to have a vote are the city council members from Olympia, that the county residents have nothing to do with, so they don't have any say in how that happens. So it's ever more crucial because it ties into elected offices that are required to be at the county seat. They can have satellite offices all around, but so there's that issue. And so although I don't think a written opinion from our prosecutor carries the same weight that the Attorney General's office carries, I do understand, what's that group that we use to give us advice on county? MRC, yeah.
Yeah.
And I would think that even they might be able to give us something if I can't get it from Elizabeth, so.
So,
Just-
to answer
it's kind of a bugaboo,
to answer
right?
your question, Elizabeth is working on that. And unfortunately, it's a matter of workload. As things just came up in the last month or so, she actually is working on a litigation that it was filed against the county. And there is if it's a priority, at least from my point of view, that litigation takes precedent. But she is working on that, and I will have a meeting this afternoon, I believe, with her, hopefully, that I can probably ask as to when she's ready to do that.
What about MRSC?
She, as part of the overall legal opinion, she will consult with her MRC. As
She has
in the
consulted
past.
with them
She has in the past.
on this issue. She didn't get anything in writing, but.
Yeah, she has in the past, and that is a normal process. I believe the prosecutor's office go through. There's always when they provide a written legal opinion, I believe there's always a way for them to look as to what others think. So, there is not, as far as there is not any particular issues related to the written legal opinion, other than the workload.
Okay.
They just put in front of us in the last month.
Okay, I'll be patient. I just think it's gonna cause problems. The farther it goes down the road, because we're gonna make that move, we voted on that. And, obviously I voted against it, but that's neither here nor there. That's the democratic process. It's moving forward. I just hate to be told, kind of like we were in 2004, hey, you had everything laid out, bought all that property, everything was ready to go, and then it came about.
But what her opinion's gonna say, because she's told us. So the fact that you get it handed to you in writing, that's not gonna change if we're either wrong, we're still gonna be wrong with a written opinion that's wrong, or with an oral opinion that's wrong.
I know, but not having anything in writing, to me, is the same as having nothing, unfortunately.
But that's not.
Verbally.
That's actually legally not true. We're allowed to rely on legal advice.
I think when it comes to justifying I don't know, a recall action because you did something wrong, because the buck does stop with us.
Yeah. I mean, I understand optically and politically it might be helpful,
Well,
but I don't think from a
legally
legal
it would.
standpoint, it really,
I think it gives you some defense, you know, to say, hey, right here, this is it. This is what we went by, rather than we got a phone call, you know, that said, or,
a dozen executive sessions.
That's right, there you go. But-
But, you know, but I think it's something to be said that, if for any reason the county is facing a challenge related to this particular matter, the prosecutor's office is the one who needs to stand because they have provided a legal opinion.
Yeah.
But yes, if it's in writing, but just the mere fact of a verbal communication, well, that isn't exactly what I meant. I said, that could be an issue, but we don't think it is, and all that, you know, anytime you get, you know, counsel, you know, my seatmate knows, you get a couple guys arguing over something, they have two different opinions. Okay, that's it for
I will
me.
follow up with, on the timing of
Okay.
that.
I don't have anything.
I don't have anything.
What a deal.
Oh, the gift of time, what?
Yeah. And I'm good.
I mean, I guess I'd be curious, since we have a little bit of time, what you guys thought of the DNR meeting yesterday. Were you satisfied by the information you were?
No.
No,
I mean, I felt like none of my questions were really answered,
Yeah.
but.
I was not satisfied, and I was surprised that they said that they were not prepared here to talk about Delica, and I was like, well, then why were
Because
you here?
you guys remember that I specified with the county manager, I said, I wasn't part of the emails that set this meeting up. Actually, it might have been when you were gone and Robin was sitting in your stead, but I was very clear, you guys can back me up.
Yeah.
I want to be prepared for the topic that we're here to talk about. I want to talk about Legacy Forest, but my understanding is that we're here to talk about Delica, so that's what I'm going to prepare for, and I was told yes. So it was very, and I take what you told me at face value, because I assume Ramiro or somebody was, I mean, I wasn't the one that got the invitation to this meeting. I was just told, oh, DNR is willing to talk to us about
Yeah,
Delica.
they approached the county to.
About Delica, right?
All inclusive, yeah.
Well, and I mean, so
Yeah.
I knew we weren't gonna get into the whole Legacy Forest issue in an hour, so I just wanted to make sure, and I knew there'd be a whole room full of citizens that wanted to hear about that, not old trees that had nothing to do with their area. They want to hear about the property damage, the risk, the Summit Lake water quality, so that's what I focused on. And then to have them go, oh, well, you know, we don't,
I wasn't ready to.
That wasn't really
to
what we were
brought
here to
by
talk about.
Experts, I think they believe, yeah.
it's like, okay, well, to me, it was just maybe they weren't able to answer some of the questions, and that was a way for them to save a little face. That was my cynical interpretation.
Yeah, I don't know what's gonna come of it. I don't know if we're allowed to interfere with that or not, or, I mean, if you think about Oso, just using that as one example, and I hate to think about the liability maybe that is being incurred up there, you know, cause a lot of, that whole community was wiped out, you know? And really, where does the buck stop? And so they're saying, oh, it's nothing like Oso. Well, it was like Oso in a miniature, just those pictures that we saw with flooding over the roads and the mud and all that. Well, if you get a big blast coming down and one home is enveloped in a mudslide and kills the family or whatever, it doesn't have to be a big Oso thing. It doesn't have to wipe out half the lake or anything.
Right.
And so when they talk about the risk incurred, they admit they're not gonna guarantee that there's no risk. Well, I don't want one home having a problem. I don't want property damage. If we prevent the problem, and can that problem be prevented by limiting the whole clear-cut concept?
Exactly.
And, you know, could if you left half the vegetation there by, I mean, I went out and looked at the trees, on those alder trees, you know, I went and looked that over. And I think, you guys were right on point, doing it the way you did. But I've been around trees my whole life, and they can do selective thinning that does not damage the whole environment.
It holds water better.
Oh, it
stops
does
all the
everything
flooding.
better.
But it's not
financially.
It's not, yeah,
yes,
but what are we cared about? Money? Is that what this is
Well, you're right,
about?
but you heard there is, as part of the thought process, there has to be an economic
It's a
component,
food
right?
fiduciary
I did feel like I
responsibility.
got something of an answer to that, though. I mean, it may not be satisfactory, but Dwayne seemed to be saying, because of the root rot issue, they needed, he's trying to say, they didn't, this was a place, I don't accept this answer because they clear cut all over the place all the time.
Anyway.
But he was trying to say, this would be a particular area you'd want to clear cut because of the root rot problem. If you can get rid of all those trees and plant something that won't be subject to that, that would be a net improvement. Now, I would accept that answer if they were only clear cutting once in a while in a root rot area, but we know that they do clear cutting as a matter of course all the time. So I only partially accept that answer, but they did put in their SEPA memo that there's a root rot problem here and they want to get rid of the Douglas fir or whatever and plant something that's going to be more resilient.
But the clear cut include alder, it's not just that.
And I guess I know a little bit about this.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yes, root rot is real.
Okay.
And yes, if you allow that to, it's a spore that grows in the ground somehow, and you'll notice root rot when the tops of the trees start to die, the very top of the tree.
Okay.
And it's real. But there are so many other ways to deal with it. Some places just follow the tree and let it deteriorate, you know. But you can plant hemlock in those areas. Hemlock will grow where Douglas fir grows, for an example, and hemlock's not affected by it. There's different, is it deciduous trees or something that are or not. Well, cedar won't necessarily always grow where Douglas fir will, but hemlock will, or white pine is kind of a comeback now lately. And there's other things they can do, but they don't need to clear cut to make that happen.
Okay.
They do need to get rid of the Douglas fir to make that
See, I
happen.
needed you to pipe up.
Yeah, well, I'm
call that. Call
I
that.
didn't think it was the right place to have an argument about some layman that thinks he knows something.
Yeah, that's how I am. It's like and that whole presentation they gave, it's like, yeah, that's what I've spent the last 6 months learning. I know all that. Like, this was about a more specific situation here in our county, in my district, with these citizens' property at risk, and
So what was interesting, at least for me to hear, is the reduction in the scope of their clear cutting.
Had nothing to do with
What
it.
was before the Board of County Commissioners letter. And, that was a little bit off for me, but.
that was so. Reading body language, he was really upset. Dwayne took issue when I kind of asked that citizen question about how do we engage with you, and as if there hadn't been public engagement. He got really defensive and said, we have public engagement to the max.
A couple chuckles in the back.
Yeah, everybody wasn't buying it.
Everyone wasn't buying it, but I could tell by his body language, he was really like,
We did it.
he was upset that accusation was being made because he felt like they had a very robust engagement. I could tell that by just reading it. But he went to the point, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I mean, it's like he went to this extreme to back that up and basically say, because then I said, well, okay, if you listen to all these people, then why did you change everything once you got a letter from us? And then he's like, we didn't. It was all before, But then it was like, oh, so you just blew us off. Like,
The article in the Lithia following up on this issue made it sound that the letter from the board had an effect.
Exactly, that was my
That's
point.
exactly what
I'm like,
public
so you just stop the thing, their public information officer put all that information into that Olympian article saying that they were going to address the board's letter with Kevin's, memo, brought new information to light, and they were going to reevaluate. They thought everything was okay, but they're going to reevaluate. So I mean, they made it. They can't have it both ways, right? They either listened to us or they listened to the citizens. They didn't listen to both of us. I mean, it's like he was trying to dance a little bit too.
He was trying to dance.
And I wasn't gonna let him get away with that because you either didn't listen to the citizens or you didn't listen to us, and when you said you did to the media. And either, you know, so you gotta get called out on one of those two, because they can't both be right. So anyway, I don't know.
I don't think they will be coming back for another briefing.
Well, I mean, Commissioner Mejia, I appreciated your comment at the end because I think it had an effect on the whole thing, just saying, look, engage with us. We're here, we want to hear about this. We don't want to be blindsided by this. You can tell the political pressure we're under. You see a room full of folks that made T-shirts for the occasion.
Made t-shirts.
about
And took off work or whatever.
Yeah, and how important this was. So like, you need to, you know, so, and then, you know, and I made a point to go up there and say, look, I appreciate you being here, and, you know, and Kevin did the same thing, and he was there saying, you know, let's discuss.
Kevin could have used a different way of delivery, so that's a different conversation.
Well,
Well, I think everyone was just getting pumped from Commissioner Menzer just being like.
and I told Kevin, I had told Kevin before the meeting, I said, look, I'm not gonna be able to say necessarily, I mean, I need you to be able to say, you know, sometimes staff tells me stuff, and then in the public meeting, they kind of don't, they freeze up. And I'll put that on my shoulders. I specifically said, please don't freeze up and not say something that's needed to be said, you know, if I call on you. I mean, I directed the questions, I only called on him to do to address something that I felt like I couldn't adequately address.
No, absolutely right. I think he was there to provide a clinical perspective, and I think in the second part, when you gave the floor, I think he was right on point to provide his technical perspective. I think I was more concerned his delivery of the first part. But yeah, that's a conversation for a different venue.
Well, I felt like the community was pleased with, you know, at least the questions that we asked,
Well, yeah, but now what, are they gonna go up there and do the clear cut next week?
probably.
Well, there again.
They resubmitted their forest practices application.
Yeah, they're not stopping.
Okay, but here's the deal. And I'll just use Oso, we can talk about the environmental issues, okay? That's bad enough, you know, the lake, the drinking water, you pointed out, it's the only drinking water lake, that kind of thing. But is it worth doing an injunction against this thing taking place until we get to the bottom of it? What does that mean? I really don't know what that means, but at least, what's another year or two to hash it out? Why not? Just think of those commissioners up in Oso, if they would have had the opportunity to tell that outfit about the logging, because apparently that had something to do with the situation up there. And if they could have saved all those lives and heartache and property damage or whatever, by just taking legal action and saying, wait a minute, we're not sure we agree with you on your assessment. And anytime you put that kind of liability on another entity, I think it makes them pay attention. It's kind of like the county manager doesn't like me to point out, well, we got some liability here about this if we don't fix this, you know, because it does. It compounds the problem. Yeah, in public. So anyway, if we were to take an action, why wouldn't we want to take an action? I guess, yeah, we don't want to impede them from doing their job. But on the other hand, if we're not satisfied with their proposal, and if you keep vegetation growing there, you lessen your possibilities of a landslide by 1,000% or something. I don't know what it is, but if you go in there and kill everything off and spray everything to get rid of the big leaf maple, because that was an issue, well, that big leaf maple tree is got a heck of a root distribution. It absorbs water. It protects the possibility of a slide, you know, and they want to get rid of those because they're not a big money tree. But a hemlock is a big money tree. They do okay. Maybe not as quite as good as Douglas fir, but why couldn't we say, look, do your thing about root rot if that's really it? Because that's usually in a confined little area. Let them go in and do that, called select logging.
Right.
And, but all the other trees are left alive in that area, and then they replant with another species, like I just threw out hemlock.
Yeah, well, the missing piece for me is what what exactly is our legal grounding to file something like that? Is
Where's
it,
counsel? Kinda.
well, that's what I'm saying, like, I would be,
Well, I don't think you need to discuss a legal option in this
Here.
setting,
Okay,
if I may.
Could
Okay,
we
okay.
schedule an executive
I
session
mean, we
because
can-
there's,
but what I think what we would need to do is ask Travis
Okay.
to present to us what our legal theory or options would be in a situation like this, when there's an inadequate or a detrimental plan, and then we can evaluate. Because I don't, you know, I like to, when I do stuff, I like to be right. I mean, that's just how I am.
I know.
I mean, I know sometimes tactically filing lawsuits is a good thing, but that's just not me. I don't, you know, I want to know that there's a pretty solid legal argument to support. And if there is, then I have no qualms or no fear about pursuing that. But if our counsel could give us, because DNR is big, they deal with this all the time, they'll know, if they can brush us off, they will. But if there's a pretty legitimate argument to be made that could stand up in court, then I'm certainly willing to discuss that, so.
Let me follow up with that.
thank you. Yeah, I mean, I've been frustrated with DNR because there has been a lack of engagement. You know, they called other counties when the article got released in the Seattle Times about the carbon sequestration. And they gave other counties a call just to let them know, this is how we're proceeding, just a heads up. But they completely did not call Thurston County, and it was like, we're right here, like, you know, like, if you called other counties, why didn't you like include us? And then it's just been frustrating with the lack of communication just in different aspects, and I feel like we just keep getting brushed off, and it's just.
I mean, one thing Dwayne said that I think, you know, is really the crux of the issue is they're in a tough spot. They're getting sued on both sides. You know, they're getting sued by certain rural counties for not cutting more trees. And they're getting pressured from Jefferson, Thurston, and Whatcom for cutting too many trees or cutting older trees, you know. So I mean, they're trying to dance a dance, but the world is changing, and maybe it's a legislative change, maybe it's a court interpretation, but I don't think we can keep going business as usual right now with the way that they're looking to cut in the next 4 years almost every tree in Thurston County that's over 80 years old is scheduled for cut. So it's a
And part of that reason is the mills don't take anything big anymore. So they gotta get them down now, which is unfortunate.
that and their HCP update
Yeah.
they allude to are the driving factors. Okay.
I'll follow up.
Well, it's 11:13. Any other commissioner item? No? Wow. Gift of time. We are adjourned.
Thank you.